West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte
My view is that the evidence shows that we're not dealing with just mistakes or sloppiness. There was something far more troubling here, and we're going to get to the bottom of it. I think the president has every right to be frustrated because I think what happened to him was one of the greatest travesties in American history. Without any basis, they started this investigation of his campaign. And even more concerning, actually, is what happened after the campaign, a whole pattern of events while he was president. To sabotage the presidency.
Hi again, everyone. They were remarkable comments at the time. Unprecedented, not normal, public comments from the head of the Department of Justice about an ongoing investigation involving then-President Donald Trump. Donald Trump's handpicked Attorney General Bill Barr there speaking openly and brazenly about the examination he ordered and appointed U.S. Attorney John Durham to lead into the origins of the Trump-Russia probe, making misleading comments since we know that Durham found, well, to quote Bill Barr's comments were bullshit. Durham found no evidence of a deep state plot against Trump. It was all a lie. Public comments like those from Barr, though, had consequences. They did damage to the department. They drove Durham's top aide, who had worked with him and for him for decades, federal prosecutor Nora Dennehy, to resign. Now, 3 years later, she has publicly spoken about it for the very first time, confirming that it was that. Words like that from Bill Barr, the politically motivated handling of the investigation that drove her to leave. Watch.
In the late summer of 2020, just months before the 2020 presidential election, he wanted a report written about our ongoing investigation. Publicly, he would not rule out releasing that report before the presidential election. I had never been asked to write a report about an investigation that was not yet complete. I then saw a version of a draft report, the conclusions of which I strongly disagreed with. Writing a report, and particularly the draft I saw, violated long-standing principles of the Department of Justice. Furthermore, the Department of Justice has a long-standing policy of not taking any public actions in the time leading up to an election that might influence that election. I simply couldn't be part of it, so I resigned. It was the most difficult personal and professional decision I've had to make.
Nora Dennehy made those comments yesterday because she's now a nominee for the Connecticut State Supreme Court. And she made those comments, she shared those revelations for the very first time at her confirmation hearing. She stressed how she had worked at DOJ under several administrations and presidents of both political parties, and how politics had never played a role in her work before. A dedicated civil servant, Dennehy's resignation signaled how far Trump and his allies had succeeded in bending the levers of the federal government to benefit the ex-president. Let us remind you right here that the Durham investigation yielded almost no convictions, nothing. A 4-year investigation costing taxpayers $6.5 million resulted in a single guilty plea from a little-known FBI lawyer and 2 acquittals at trial by juries. When evidence of a potential crime was turned over to Durham and his team, suspected financial crimes linked to the ex-president in Italy, we don't know anything. We don't know if Durham did anything with that. Certainly didn't bring any charges. This is where we start the hour with some of our favorite experts and friends. Former top official at the Department of Justice, Andrew Weissman, is back with us, plus former Assistant Director for Counterintelligence at the FBI, Frank Figliuzzi, is here. He worked for John Durham as a legal intern before he joined the FBI. And former FBI counterintelligence agent Pete Strzok is here. Pete, I believe the very first time I talked to you, it was the day this story broke that Laura Dennehy had left the Durham probe. My question for you as an investigator is, how do we find out where this draft report is of the Durham investigation that when she refused to write it? I had been asked to write a report. I refused to do it, but then she testified yesterday in her confirmation hearing, quote, there's a draft report was written. What does it say? And shouldn't we be able to see it?
Oh, well, Nicole, I think absolutely we should. I mean, look, this is what weaponization of the Department of Justice looks like. Not the clown car that Jim Jordan is driving. It is things like this. And when you look, first, I want to thank Laura Dennehy for her bravery, 1, in this testimony, but 2, for doing the right thing, for having the moral integrity to resign back in 2020. Because had she not done that, I think there's a very real chance that whatever this draft report was would have been published and quite likely could have impacted the 2020 election. But as to seeing it, you know, my question is, she joins now, if you think back, the 4 prosecutors who quit the Roger Stone prosecution, the at least 1 prosecutor who quit the Mike Flynn prosecution, many of whom I worked with. And so you have to ask, this pattern of behavior of at least now 6 prosecutors who quit rather than put up with Bill Barr's just absolute corruption of the Department of Justice. DOJ OPR apparently is still doing some sort of work looking into this, but my question is, where is that? I don't know, and I look forward to reading this draft.
Andrew Weissman, how do we get our hands on it? Again, this is what she testified to yesterday. I was asked to write a draft report. I had never been asked to write a report for an ongoing investigation. And then she says she looked at it. Someone else did it when she refused. Does the public have a right, and the people that were subjected to something that was purely political in nature, does the public have a right to see that?
Well, one of those people who is victimized by this is on our panel right now, which is Pete Strzok, who was unfairly maligned and was under sort of suspicion and, you know, completely cleared by the IG report, and even by I can't even call it a report, but the Durham, I'm not even sure I can even call it an investigation. But the way you get this is the Freedom of Information Act, which is a statute that allows you to get government documents. It may be redacted as to names that might be in there of people who should not, no aspersions should be cast on them. It might be one of the reasons that Nora resigned, because that would be improper. It would also be improper if it literally repeated the quotes from Bill Barr that you just played, Nicole. So everyone understands, the clip that you just played of Bill Barr has him lying. And I usually don't like to use the L word like so clearly and just say, well, it's wrong, but who knows what his intent is. But here, just to be clear, the Inspector General and even John Durham at the end of the day said that there was a factual basis to open the investigation. And so your quote of Bill Barr here is saying that there was no basis to open it. And that after everyone looked at that said that is wrong. And he was making these statements to influence the election, to malign people at the FBI and the Department of Justice who were doing their duty. It actually would have been, I think, a dereliction of duty if they had not opened an investigation, and that is what much of what the Inspector General found as well.
So here, I have that here, Andrew Weissman. Here is what the only IG not to be fired by Donald Trump, so not viewed as a deep state actor, right? All the IGs get canned except DOJ IG Horowitz. And here's what he found in 2019. Quote, "We did not find documentary or testimonial evidence that political bias or improper motivation influenced the decisions to open the 4 individual resignations." He finds that in 2019. So Bill Barr, not only does he lie, he seems to knowingly lie, Andrew Weissman. And I wonder if you can just speak to the pressure cooker that, I don't think Nora Denny is the only, I think 3 prosecutors ended up quitting the Durham probe. Can you just describe that pressure, the tectonic plates pushing against each other from Durham and Barr to people like Nora Denny?
Sure. Well, I do think that Pete has the right, not even analogy, which is that this is just a remarkable event to have people on a project resign, whether it was from the Department of Justice in the Stone case and the Flynn case. But here, the idea that Nora Denny, who had been in the department for years, was resigning over this. I sort of put her in the category of people like Richard Donahue, of Jeffrey Rosen, the people who at the end of the day did the right thing. I think when she signed up for this, this was clearly going to be a sort of baseless investigation of the investigators. I don't think there was really a good faith argument for doing this, and their investigation actually proved that. But I do think at the end of the day, when push came to shove, she, like Jeffrey Rosen, the acting attorney general, and Richard Donahue, the acting deputy attorney general, they, like her, just there was a line they were not willing to cross. And so that's good for her that she did that. I'm not sure I'd say that it's so great that all of those people participated in a regime where the basic goal of that regime was to undermine the rule of law. And she was present for Bill Barr making all of those statements and had not resigned. So again, I give her, credit for leaving, and that is a tough decision. I'm not sure I'd give her a lot of credit for staying and participating in that. I just don't think that's, I think when you look at what John Durham did, 24 jurors in 2 trials found unanimously that John Durham had not proved its case. Not a single one of the jurors agreed with him. 24 jurors said that the defendants in the case should be acquitted. If any one of them had disagreed, there would have been a hung jury. Instead, there were acquittals with respect to all counts of all of the defendants. That's not a great record, and I think it's a testament to the fact that what John Durham was up to at Bill Barr's behest was really baseless, and people like Pete Strzok took the brunt of that, and there was no reason for them to, if in a system where it was going to be apolitical.
It is Friday, the 22nd of September of 2023, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. Precious, the little Yorkie, is our door girl, and she will be seating you directly for our especially special daily special, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. Yeah. Okay, load your hopper on that one and see what happens, huh? Yeah, it's Friday. And I will assure you, we have not imbibed so early in the morning from the wonderful French 77s that we just love. We love them here. We do. So it's too early, but it's nice to dream about it, maybe. So anyway, as we were getting ready to put ourselves in the bubble this morning, Breaking news came down about Bob Menendez being indicted on federal charges for bribery. Bribery, can you believe that? Now, as far as I know, all the OLC memos that the Justice Department has always presented whenever these things or these happenstances happen is that you can't indict a sitting elected official. Not anymore. Maybe back in the Abscam days they could. Not now. That's election interference. I'm sure that Bob Menendez was running for office. I mean, was he on the phone making phone calls for, campaign funds? Huh? That's what these guys, when they talk about how hard they work, that's what they do. That's what they do. They're on the phone begging for money. The guy's running for office. They're trying to keep him from running for office. Now, from what I've learned recently is that means that they're not coming after Bob. They're coming after us. They're trying to take away our rights. Because if they can come after Bob Menendez and charge him with federal charges for bribery, they can come after us. And you would expect it because bribery is a crime. Damn. Are we going to go and maybe riot in the streets over Bob Menendez getting caught taking bribes? Or giving them? Who knows? I think in this instance, Bob's taking them. Because if your work is being on the phone for most of your congressional day or senatorial day, begging for money, if someone just comes to you and says, here, take these gold bars, you might do it. You mean I don't have to call up for this? You're delivering it unannounced? Okay, what do you want? Would you like to have a drink? I got some nice scotch right here. $78 scotch from the airport, by the way. So, yeah. Bob Menendez broke the law. And he will be judged by a jury of his peers, as it should be. And if they adjudicate that he did indeed break the law, take bribes, then he will be judged and sentenced accordingly. There's no Hunter Biden bullshit. This is Bob Menendez breaking the law, getting caught, and the wheels of justice, rolling irrevocably to their assigned compartmented assignments. Yeah, that's what the law is. Compartmented assignments. So, yeah, that's what we do. We don't go out rioting in the streets, making up some sort of weird conspiracy theory about John F. Kennedy still being alive. Are you serious? Yeah, they are. And apparently we're supposed to give them credence. We're not Rand Paul coming out on national TV saying, hey, I'm a Russian asset, no money to Ukraine, and we're going to stop this government because I'm a Confederate soldier and we're finally winning the great war against the northern aggressors. Confederate soldiers attacking our government from within. But we'll throw our guys in jail because they did break the law. So we just expect a little bit of, respect for the same. Kicking us because we're hippies. Well, yeah, I'll tell you, some of us are punks, but we all have a moral code. And that moral code is don't piss on your neighbor. Really, it's untoward. It really is. Okay. They never said that on the commune, but I did. And maybe that's why I was sort of like, he's too much. He's too. Yeah, I was 200. You got that one right. But I meant well. Okay. What do we have in store for you here on the end of this week? And with Yom Kippur just, right there. Looks like David and a few others will be on hiatus for a few days next week. And as well they should. So, yes, we all atone. And we will. Anyway, we here have, I don't know, we're with the fallen angels, okay? Lounging around. I guess we're lounging around. Anyway, we'll be working, and it's not really work. I'm not doing anything this time of day anyway, except maybe I'd be sleeping, but I'm not. I'm taking care of my dear Ma. We like to get up early around these neck of the woods. So what do we have in store for you here as we begin on this fine Blue Moon Spirits Fridays? At the top, that was a fairly long clip there about Nora Danahy confirming that she was so offended by the way that Barr was handling the investigation and all the political machinations, that was what drove her to leave, just as we all suspected. Indeed. On the rest of the menu, the Mississippi State Auditor says numerous social science and humanities degree programs are indoctrination factories. You know, the Enlightenment. Some people like to call it that. Fort Lauderdale, Florida was duped in a $1.2 million phishing scam. Oh, well, if you were in an indoctrination factory, you might have been able to avoid that. Apparently not. And with climate change hitting home, California announced that they are making reforms to the state's insurance system to stabilize the market. Well, in Florida, that you can't get any home insurance, and they're kind of make sure that you're still able to get some insurance in California because, they're woke. Mm-hmm. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where the European Union called on the Bosnian Serb parliament to reject a draft law that brands NGOs as foreign agents. And Bulgaria expelled a Russian and 2 Belarusian clerics accused of spying for Moscow. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln, who also does much more than just monitor the chat room. She also has a show with Ricky, and they do that on Saturday night. It's the late night, early morning talk show, 9 p.m. on the West Coast. That's midnight on the East. And wherever it is, wherever you are. So tune in. And thank you, Kelly, for everything that you do. If you out there in radio listening land would, I don't know, look across the page. Yeah, we'll just make it easy. Look across the page to the left from that chat room link, and then you'll notice the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio and possibly send us what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink, if you could send the funds from that once a month, we are able to pool that with other like-minded Patreons, and that puts a big dent in what we pay on our bills and everything else. So thank you for your generosity, and thank you for considering being generous, because we need it. I gotta tell you. Anyway, thank you so much. Now, if you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, Mastodon, Spoutable, Blue Sky soon, and you can do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of those, and a lot more than that too, so thanks, Tom. You can also follow me on Twitter, Mastodon, Spoutable, Blue Sky, Tumblr, Instagram, Facebook, at Justice Putnam, or in some instances, simply Justice Putnam, all one word. You'll find me. And I post the show notes and links diary. They're trying to call them stories, but they're diaries, okay? Come on. It's an old blog term from way back when they had blogs. Anyway, I post that show notes and links diary on Daily Co's 10 minutes before showtime. And if you follow me on those social media platforms, the links are right there. And then you can go right to it easily, because sometimes the search function trying to find a specific article or diary might be a little daunting, shall we say. But if you follow me on social media, you'll not only get tidbits of whimsy, you'll also be able to access the show notes and links diary by the links provided. Alrighty, if you would like to follow the show on Twitter, it's just a placemat, and I assure you I've been saying this for quite a while, that we will flesh out that show account on these other platforms real soon. But on Twitter right now, you can find it at Cookbook West. And please do pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. And once again, as we end up the week, we did getting some requests from folks to see what we can do to get on Sirius XM. I don't know. To me, they're a competitor, but I guess a competitor. But we will, and we will look into it, and I don't know what it entails. I have an idea from working in radio. I do. But we'll talk with Tom about that and see how we should proceed. So thank you for your interest and encouragement as well. All righty. Then I guess we're ready to go into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Now, it's by Michael Goldberg from the Associated Press Report for America. I was not able to readily find that article at the AP, but I did originally find it here at the ABC News site. So that's where we are, and it is indeed by Michael Goldberg from the AP Report for America, but at the ABC News site. Calling numerous social science and humanities degree programs indoctrination factories. Mississippi. Their auditor says the state should defund several college majors and invest in subjects that match the state's workforce needs. Well, you know, they tried that with welding, but they had it in a junior college, pal. You know? Higher learning is not necessarily to be a conveyor belt for your labor force, right? I don't know. Call me a romantic, which I suppose is now going to be defunded, as if we were ever funded to begin with. In a report published on Tuesday, Mississippi State Auditor Shad White. Defund somebody named Shad White. Why do we consider them apples and oranges? And of course, they specify here that he is also, shocking, a Republican, as if we could not have figured that one out. Well, he argued that the state should change its approach to funding its public universities. He proposed tying public investment to workforce needs instead of providing funds without regard for the degree programs. as has been traditionally the case. Too many college graduates are leaving Mississippi, and aligning degree programs with labor market demand might stem the tide, White said. Oh, he wants to go back to picking cotton. And I'm not kidding. In numerous statements on social media leading up to the report's publication, White said there should be no taxpayer funding for useless degrees in garbage fields like urban studies, because he thinks urban studies means black. What urban studies actually is, planning and urban development and, zoning. Even water treatment, pal. There's a lot of STEM courses in urban studies, pal. He wants to get rid of anthropology, sociology, German literature. All right. African American studies. Well, of course, if you're going to get rid of urban studies, you might as well get rid of African American studies, too. It's all black to Mississippi. Wants to get rid of gender studies and women's studies. Because when the little ladies finally got Abigail Adams' message, they became a little bit too uppity for us men folk to keep in place. Equal Rights Amendment. Okay, we know where that went. And he said that those programs are hotbeds of political radicalization. Can you believe that? Anthropology, sociology, German literature. I don't know. I'm having a little bit of a problem wrapping my head around an auditor making these types of assessments, but here we are. White's statements and his report arrive as education from K-12 to the university level remains at the center of America's culture wars. Why is that? We know why. A Florida law enacted in May bars curricula that teach identity politics or theories about race, gender, and sexuality disfavored by conservatives. Well, we don't call them conservatives because they're Nazis. This is exactly what the Nazis did, right down to the book burning. Next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays is by staff at the Miami Herald. South Florida is known as the fraud epicenter of the United States. Fort Lauderdale, or what we used to call it, Fort Frauderdale, certainly realized that last week when $1.2 million in taxpayer money fell into the hands of scammers. I make a little bit of editing. He didn't say bucks, but I like to. Was it a he? I don't know. The city made the 7-figure payment on September 14th after believing it had received a legitimate bill from Moss Construction. Detective Allie Adamson, a spokesperson for the Fort Lauderdale police, said in a Thursday news release that was yesterday. The city learned the request for payment was fraudulent, Adamson said. There is an active investigation, and we will be working with all appropriate law enforcement agencies to determine exactly what occurred. She said that is Allie Adamson, the spokesperson for the cops. This type of online fraud, called a phishing scam, targets consumers by sending them an email that appears to be from a well-known source, sometimes requesting a payment. And that's according to the Federal Trade Commission. The recipient, believing the electronic communication is legitimate, transfers the funds to scammers, or provides personal identifying information. Then the fraudsters can use the info to open new accounts or invade the consumer's existing accounts. The Commission says that one of the first things entities should do after realizing they have transferred funds to scammers is to ask their bank to reverse this transaction and return the money. Consumers are also recommended to file a police report. Fort Lauderdale police declined to answer Miami Herald's questions, citing an ongoing investigation. Well, that's what nice way of putting it. And as of Thursday afternoon, Moss Construction had not responded to Herald's emailed request for comment. According to the South Florida Sun-Sentinel, Fort Lauderdale City Manager Greg Chavarria told staff on Wednesday in an email that the city's bank is working to get the money back, but it could take at least a week. This final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. California top leaders announced yesterday, Thursday, that they are making reforms to the state's insurance system to stabilize the market. A big shift in one of the nation's most disaster-prone states was with one of the world's largest insurance markets. The state's action using executive decrees came after 7 out of the state's top 12 carriers, including Allstate and State Farm, have pulled back coverage in the last year due to wildfires and the rising costs of such risks. They have claimed that homeowners' premiums do not match the risk they face. California's move could have national implications as insurance companies grapple nationwide with the latest threats from climate change in what California Insurance Commissioner Ricardo Lara called a historic agreement between regulators and the industry. His department is working more closely with insurers to more quickly assess and adjudicate their rate increase requests, which now take about 6 months. His agency also wants to more accurately price at-risk homes and encourage residents to better harden and protect them from wildfires and squelch the rapid growth of California's FAIR Plan, an insurance program for high-risk properties that's supposed to be a temporary safety net. But as the commissioner said yesterday, Thursday, it's become the first resort, not the last, for many residents, not just those in desperate situations, but because of the dwindling lack of private policy options. In a big win for the industry, California reversed its position on barring insurance companies from using forward-looking catastrophe models, which is standard in most other states to more accurately price rates. Until now, the state only let carriers use historical 20-year data when pricing policies. The reason, explained Amy Bach, of the executive director for United Policyholders, a consumer group, is that regulators were afraid that insurance companies could use the sophisticated catastrophe models to inflate and overstate how risky an area truly was to charge more. Laura said insurers need to be transparent with how they are using this data to ensure they are not inflating risk and charging people more. If they are not, the department has full authority to claw back their rate increases. Well, that seems like a big give and take. We'll see how that shakes out. No pun intended. All right, let us now go to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, Not So Equal. There's no better starting place for the creators of drama than visceral desires from deep in the human psyche. In a world rife with injustice, the producers of the original 80s TV show, The Equalizer, understood the power of a persona with unfettered franchise to bring justice, especially where institutions have failed. Unlike in politics, where this usually goes horribly wrong, in fiction we get a hero like Robert McCall, who this time around in The Equalizer 3 stumbles injured into a remote Italian coastal village where the local mafia is involved in an international drug ring believed to be raising money for jihadis. It's game on when the supposedly retired McCall has a phone number that picks up in Langley or somewhere. Operatives are then on their way as he befriends the townsfolk who are being tormented by an array of violent, beyond redemption sociopaths who don't know until it's too late that they've messed with the wrong guy. If this sounds pretty generic, you may not have seen the first two Equalizers or be familiar in general with Denzel Washington, whose stage presence borders on omnipotence. While the violence in this one can put some horror films to shame, director Antoine Fuqua uses it surgically and sparingly. It's no John Wick. The violence is interwoven into complex storylines and subplots, and especially into McCall's life situation, of which we know some tragic facts, but little of his inner life and struggle for belonging. Support kudos go to Dakota Fanning as CIA agent Emma, and to Gina Scoladero as McCall's friend Amina, as well as the Italian actors doing the henchmen. Stunningly shot and with an ominous and insistent soundtrack, The Equalizer 3 is a film with few equals in its genre. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at Take2MovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Welcome to A Cup of Health with CDC, a weekly feature of the MMWR, the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. I'm your host, Dr. Robert Gaines. Arthritis affects more than 1 in 5 adults and is the most common cause of disability in the United States. Dr. Camille Barber is a researcher with CDC's National Center for Chronic Disease Prevention and Health Promotion. He's joining us today to discuss ways to control arthritis. Welcome to the show, Camille.
Thank you.
Camille, are there different types of arthritis?
Yes, there are over 100 types. The most common types are osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, gout, and fibromyalgia.
What are the symptoms of arthritis?
Arthritis, which is joint inflammation, can result in pain, stiffness, and swelling in the joints.
Does arthritis affect some people more than others?
Yes, it affects primarily the elderly. It also affects people with chronic conditions such as heart disease, diabetes, and obesity. And it's also much higher in women compared to men.
What are some strategies for managing arthritis pain?
Now, adults with arthritis may be reluctant to engage in physical activity because of the symptoms that they have, such as joint pain and stiffness. However, we know that there are low-impact types of physical activities, such as walking and swimming, that have been shown to improve function and reduce pain in adults with arthritis. There are also self-management programs that, in addition to these physical activity programs, have different ways to maintain weight and other ways to control your arthritis symptoms.
How can people reduce their risk of developing arthritis?
So as I said earlier, osteoarthritis is the most common type of arthritis, and the best way to reduce your chances of developing it is to maintain a normal weight and avoid joint injury.
Camille, where can listeners get more information about arthritis, including the self-management program?
Listeners can go to cdc.gov/arthritis.
Thanks, Camille. I've been talking today with CDC's Dr. Camille Barber about ways to control the pain caused by arthritis. Remember, although there's no cure, arthritis can be controlled through medical treatment, regular exercise, and weight maintenance. If you suffer from arthritis, talk to a healthcare provider about programs to manage your condition. Until next time, be well. This is Dr. Robert Gaines for A Cup of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Donna Phillips. Today we continue our series on civil rights for the Civil Discourse and American Legacy Project. We are joined by special guest Dr. Lester Brooks, American History Professor Emeritus from Anne Arundel Community College. Welcome, Dr. Brooks.
Thank you for having me.
Sure thing. Dr. Brooks, how does Frederick Douglass's speech, "What to the Slave is the 4th of July," capture the ongoing struggle for civil rights?
Douglass, this was an incredible speech. He wondered, first of all, why he was introduced or invited to speak. And he spoke brilliantly. He was one of the leaders in the fight to bring about emancipation for slaves. And in the speech, he questioned the idea of blacks and July 4th. As far as he was concerned, the July 4th celebration didn't include the enslaved, didn't include blacks, because they weren't benefiting from the Declaration of Independence. And he continually talks about the Declaration of Independence in that speech and how he admires the principles that were placed in, that came out of that Declaration of Independence. So he deeply appreciated them. And as far as he was concerned, he wanted them to be extended. But he did have hope. And that's the good thing, that he did see hope for the future of America.
Thank you, Dr. Brooks.
Thank you.
That's all for today's podcast, 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1985. That was the year that the first Farm Aid concert was held in Champaign, Illinois. A retrospective article in Time magazine reported, quote, "In the 1980s, American farmers were hit hard by what were, at the time, the worst economic conditions since the Great Depression. Droughts ravaged the fields, property values plunged, loan interest rates soared. Thousands were forced off their land and faced foreclosure and bankruptcy. Farmer suicide rose at alarming rates. The idea to use music to aid the farmers began with Bob Dylan at an event to help African famine victims. Then musicians Willie Nelson, John Mellencamp, and Neil Young took up his idea and ran with it. 50 musicians took the stage at the University of Illinois football stadium. The organizers were joined by such headliners as Bob Dylan, Johnny Cash, Billy Joel, Tom Petty, Roy Orbison, Bonnie Raitt, Kenny Rogers, Joni Mitchell, the Beach Boys, Jimmy Buffett, Bon Jovi, Foreigner, and more. The musicians played for 14 hours to a rain-soaked crowd of nearly 80,000. A telethon also helped to bring in donations. It raised $9 million for farm relief. More importantly, it helped raise national awareness of the dire economic conditions faced by many small farmers. Farm Aid has continued to hold concerts for small farmers. In 2015, the 30th anniversary concert was held in Chicago. As an organization, Farm Aid has raised more than $50 million for small farmers.
Now, live for Farm Aid and a concert for America, here's Willie Nelson.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
I just can't wait to get on school again.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 46 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting highs in the upper 70s, low 80s, sunny conditions throughout the day. Winds will be light and variable, mostly clear tonight with lows in the mid to low 40s once again. Winds out of the west at 5 to 10 miles per hour, then partly cloudy skies tomorrow. During the morning hours will then become more overcast in the afternoon with highs in the mid-70s, winds out of the west at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And then it looks like we could be getting some of what they are now calling an atmospheric river of rain coming close to us, at least, so we should be getting some of it. And more rain on Sunday, and then Monday, Tuesday looks like we could be getting close to a couple of inches when this atmospheric river flows on through. So we'll see how that goes. Oh, it looks like ragweed pollen has now gone into the high range here in our little burg of Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is in the good range at 20 parts per million, and that daytime UV index is in the moderate range at level 5. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.04 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles, and relative humidity is at 86%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world, and that is the Weather Underground. London is 62 degrees and partly cloudy. Paris is 62 and mostly cloudy. Rome is 82 and partly cloudy with a thunderstorm and rain watch that could impact critical infrastructure, by the way. Kabul is 62 and clear. Kyiv is 72 degrees and partly cloudy. Hong Kong is 83 and fair. Tokyo is 72 with rain, and they are under a flood watch. Melbourne, Victoria, Australia is 45 and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 58 degrees and mostly cloudy. Chicago, Illinois is 71 degrees and partly cloudy, and New York, New York is 68 degrees Fahrenheit and mostly cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world, and that is the Weather Underground. Associated Press World Desk brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The European Union yesterday, Thursday, urged authorities in the Serb-controlled half of Bosnia to, without delay, withdraw a draft law that brands nonprofit groups funded from abroad as foreign agents. The law is to be adopted by the Bosnian Serb parliament at a session starting next Tuesday, and the assembly is dominated by lawmakers who are close to the mini-state separatist pro-Russian leader Milorad Dodik. Critics say the draft law resembles a similar one adopted by the Russian Duma on the eve of the Russian aggression against Ukraine. The EU strongly calls upon all members of the Republika Srpska National Assembly to oppose this draft law, which aims to intimidate and suppress civil society organizations by branding their representatives as foreign agents, the statement said. The Bosnian Serb parliament last month passed a law recriminalizing libel. Critics say the law restricts freedom of expression and silences critical media. The move has had a chilling effect on free speech in the Republic, the EU statement said, adding that by adopting the new draft law, the Bosnian Serb mini-state would come closer to the authoritarian regimes instead of the European family. The Serb-dominated entity in Bosnia and the one run by the country's Bosniaks, who are mostly Muslim, and Croats, were formed after the 1992-95 war that left over 100,000 people dead and millions homeless. Bosnian Serb leader Dodik has repeatedly threatened to proclaim independence of the Serb-controlled half of Bosnia and join the territory with neighboring Serbia. There are widespread fears that Russia, acting through its ally Serbia, is trying to destabilize the Balkan region to shift at least some of the international attention from its own aggression on Ukraine.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
This final amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is brought to us by a busy world desk at the Associated Press. Bulgaria is expelling one Russian and two Belarusian nationals for carrying out activities against Bulgaria's national security and interests, authorities said yesterday, Thursday. The country's Agency for National Security said in a press release that the three had worked to purposefully influence the social and political processes in Bulgaria in favor of Russian geopolitical interests. It added that the three had been stripped of the right of residence and barred from entering Bulgaria for a period of 5 years. The statement did not elaborate and provided only initials of the three. The Russian embassy in Sofia reacted angrily in a Facebook post to the expulsions, calling the move a rude, blatant action by Bulgarian authorities. It's sad. The three expelled were members of the clergy. The prior of the Russian Orthodox Church in Sofia, Archimandrite Vasian, and 2 ministers of the Church of St. Nicholas of Myra. We are indignant at the fact and format of the decision taken by the Bulgarian side, the embassy said. It is obvious that the current Bulgarian leadership has set itself the task of destroying not only the socio-political, cultural, and humanitarian ties between our states, but also of severing relationships between the sister Russian and Bulgarian Orthodox churches, and of embittering the Russian and Bulgarian peoples against each other. It added that the responsibility for the rapid degradation of bilateral cooperation lies entirely with the Bulgarian side. You know, Shakespeare would say, I don't think you protested too much. Last year, Bulgaria expelled 70 Russian diplomatic staff in a move that severely strained diplomatic ties between the two countries, which were close allies during communist times. It was the greatest ever number of Russian diplomats expelled by Bulgaria, a member of the EU and NATO. Bulgaria has strongly backed the West sanctions against Moscow since Russia launched its war on the Ukraine. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week. But you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night and all weekend for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we will meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. De novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-dee-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.